The council meeting for Monday, March 25th, 2019. I'd ask everyone in attendance to rise and join us in singing O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you to the National Film Board of Canada for the images of our country and to an alumni of our very own Grande Prairie Boys Choir for the audio. We'll move into the adoption of our previous council meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt that set of minutes? Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I move that Council approve the minutes of the City Council meeting held Monday, March 11th, 2019 as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on those minutes before we adopt them? Any errors or omissions we need to correct? I don't see anybody ringing in, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries, and then we'll move into the adoption of the agenda. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I recommend that Council adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Is there any discussion or debate on the agenda? Again, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. This brings us to the delegation portion of our agenda. This is an opportunity that we have at every regular City Council meeting to hear from the community and any delegations that wish to come forward, unless it's something that's the subject of a public hearing. I appreciate that we have some representatives from the Grande Prairie Catholic District School Board, and so your item is a public hearing item, which will follow immediately after our delegation section. But we did have a delegation let us know ahead of time that they wish to present, and that was the Grande Prairie Friendship Center. And I think that might be Ms. Lambert English. So if you'd like to come forward, come on up to the presenters table. We're happy to have you. We do have a couple of delegations or folks that have indicated that they might like to speak tonight. And so just like to remind everybody, generally we like to try and keep presentations to about 5 minutes. And if you're getting close towards the end of that, I'll maybe just give you a little bit of a wave. Welcome. If you just introduce yourself for our recording secretary and anybody that might be watching, and welcome.
Thank you, Bill. So my name is Delane Lambert English, and I'm here today representing the Grande Prairie Friendship Center. The Grande Prairie Friendship Center is currently applying for funding through the National Association of Friendship Centers and Status of Women to have a commemoration project for missing and murdered Indigenous women, to have one built in Grande Prairie. So I was supposed to come to this meeting 2 weeks ago, and I ended up losing my voice. And my presentation has changed completely. At that time, I would have come to City Council to ask for funding and support and land. And since then, the Grande Prairie Regional College has come on board with this proposal, and they've offered us the land and the monument at no cost. So the idea is to, well, backing up to the proposal, one of the proposal guidelines was for us to consult with community. So we held a community talking circle on February 27th, and it was really impressed upon us that for many of the MMIW families of missing people, they don't have a place to go to. There's no gravestone, there's no type of memorial. And for one individual in particular, her niece had gone missing from Grande Prairie, and she doesn't know anybody here. And she often still comes back and looks and has nowhere to go. And so this idea at the Community Talking Circle, we wanted to have a grotto type monument built. What we're doing right now is we're consulting with stone carvers, and we have two ideas on the table. One is a grotto type monument, a place people can go to for prayer, for peacefulness. And then the other idea, if we can't carve the stone, we'll have a copper plate mounted onto the stone with a jingle dress dancer etched into the stone. And so the reason we picked the jingle dress dancer is because that represents healing. And so it was important to do that. At that consultation as well, we really wanted the area to be near water, to have trees, stone, and the place that Grande Prairie Regional College offered us is just northeast of the campus, just along the Muskosipi Park trails. If anyone knows the history of that big, huge rock that's out there. So back when they were doing additions to the college, there was a big rock on site, and it was too expensive to move it, so they left it. And further on, they built a picnic table. They put a picnic table there and some trees, and so that's the area where they've told us we can have the monument. So the idea is to work on it this summer and have it completed by October 4th, which is Sisters in Spirit Day, and have a big celebration. So I'm coming here today to ask for support from City Council by way of a letter of support, which I'm sorry, my timeline is really short. I need it by Thursday. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
That's great. Thanks very much. So we do have an opportunity for questions. Council, any questions for Ms. Lambert English? I don't see anybody ringing in, so the request is pretty clear. Obviously, if we needed to get details on what to put in the letter, we'd be able to contact you, and I think we have your contact information.
Yes, I can email some information from the proposal.
Okay. And again, just to be clear, at this stage, you're not looking for any sort of financial support. It's really an endorsement of the project. Yeah.
It is, yes.
Okay. Well, we deal with delegation business towards the end of our agenda. The most likely outcome would be, I guess, in this case, that since it's just a letter of sort of endorsement or support, council might have a discussion and debate about that and have a motion arising. We can direct, in the past, council's directed the mayor to write letters of support for different things, and that might be an opportunity here. But I don't see anybody with any questions. Thanks very much for your presentation this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And next, I think we had some folks that had come in this evening hoping to present. Was there Miss Quinn was here and wished to present some ideas about Rotary House? Yeah, sure. Miss Quinn, if you want to come forward and have a seat, you can introduce yourself again. You've sort of seen that before. We'll just make sure that we get your name for the recording secretary. And you saw my little spiel and introduction with the last time that we tried to keep our presentation to approximately 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. My name is Chantal Quinn. Thank you for having me tonight. I have a couple ideas. For the Rotary, I know that there is some pyros there. We have to justify that. But for the heating and for building, what about fire pits? And we pretty much have, 911 there quite often. And a few of the people, I just said it's a different approach, I think, for addictions and different sort of mental illness. I have my ideas about it. I kind of thought about a prayer circle, an outdoor sauna or something for more therapeutic. Painted walkways, actual speaker that, you can kind of control so the music's outside. For the art museum, in Winnipeg, they have that outdoor, I think, was it the Forks or something? Is it Forks? They have a disco ball. And it's out there. And I asked them over there, and I said, that open space in the back, can we have dances? Jazz, authentic as well. And a lot of the things I wanted to talk about is having the York restored, rebuilt, revamped, a New Orleans kind of feel, to kind of have a Granville Street, New Orleans, kind of a different funk. It'll help with the dispensaries, kind of a BC feel in Grande Prairie. It's a transient community. We have multiple cultures. And I'm like, I like for someone to play their banjo at 3 a.m., I'm okay with that. Like, just to show me your funk a little bit. What else I said? For a youth shelter, if you're thinking about doing it, a practicum for students in, like, say, dance, fitness, health, to start, early credits and start doing, like, the yoga or whatever. And we do little ones all the way to elderly. Graffiti walls we can paint every week, a different theme, and anyone can draw as long as somebody draws something. We need a dance or a bar, maybe not a bar, but like an outdoor, indoor, actual club. I think that would help, but not like how it was at the corral. It's so formal, or what is the word? I can't do a corral when there's beats. Like, you need to have some sort of funk with levels, like the Y in Edmonton. So you could have like a metal one, a rave, Shambhala kind of thing, and a whatever. 3 different levels, and keep switching it. We need it. The people here, like, they're afraid to dance. Everyone's like, I don't want to look like I'm on something. And really, they're just excited. And I've talked to multiple people. I can't move my legs anymore. If I'm not excited, I can't walk. And it's like, I pretty much need a wheelchair, but you keep positive I don't need it. And like a PJ night, where even like if you're here, onesies, love it. And just have that feel, because then it's like better business for everybody. So it's just some ideas. And to pay some of the workers, like say maybe $10 an hour, it's something simple. But I said with $60 a day, you could get your own sweatshirt, And, instead of going out for drugs, you'll, just something. Because I know I'm like $10. I'm like, we need more money. And then a kind of an idea I wanted to pitch was a different way to introduce children, like kindergarten or whatever, to science and math, physics, but using a wishing approach. So it's like getting like superhero powers, or painting walking sticks. We need a fairy trail somewhere to carve outdoor pumpkins. Sorry, like, okay, but like something like that here. I think the city would make a lot of money the right way, and it would just change a lot of things.
Quinn, I think we're just about at time.
For sure.
I'm going to check and see if there's anybody that has any questions for you. I see Councillor Clayton in the queue.
Thanks.
Oh, so Councillor Clayton, your mic went off there.
Appreciate you coming out tonight. I'm curious, in the neighborhood that you live in within Grande Prairie, have you tried to find out if there's an active neighborhood association that possibly you could get involved in? There's opportunities within different neighborhood associations for the events and different things that you speak of. So I'm wondering, have you reached out at all?
I've reached out everywhere, and for me, no. I've lived here my whole life, almost 30 years.
Okay.
I lived out past TP Creek, so the farm section, but I was all oil field. Mm-hmm. There wasn't enough for individuals who are a little bit spunky, but I've talked to people on the street, at the art theater. I wanted different approaches to mental health. I'm sure if I could pitch myself, and if I could get some funding behind me, I would make things happen. Like, I can make things happen. And I need a good crew to back me up, that take it serious.
If I can offer a little bit of direction, I would suggest that somebody who's as passionate as yourself looks to be a volunteer for some of the great organizations across our community. Whether it's volunteering at an event such as Stampede or Street Performers or Bear Creek Folk Fest. There's many festivals and different things across our community that need passionate volunteers who are engaged and want to see their community do great things. So I appreciate you coming out tonight, and encourage you to get behind an organization and volunteer. It'd be a great start. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. I don't see anybody else in the queue. So you heard before, we deal with our delegation business towards the end of our agenda.
Yes.
But thanks very much for coming this evening and presenting your ideas.
Okay, thank you.
And then next, I think we had Miss Schwerhan. Teresa? come on down. You've seen my introduction a couple of times now. If you'll introduce yourself, and then we will do a round of questions, but I'll give you that same sort of warning when we get to about that 5-minute mark, okay?
Yeah. I'm Teresa Swaran.
I'm Glenn Groner.
And actually, we're here on behalf of ourselves. We are tired of supporting Rotary House with everything they want out of our houses, our sheds, our yards, and our cars. We want to be reimbursed for everything that was taken, and it's not just the two of us. Like with other people were going to come, but one, her grandmother is very sick, so she had to go to Calgary. And another one got called to work, and yeah. But the stuff that they took out of my storage shed on December 31st, they took a $1,200 Jeep Comanche bicycle, which you can't replace, and they took a $249 CCM, and they broke my hasp, that's $5. They took a bag of bottles, that's around $5. And I'm not sure if there's any more stuff in my shed missing, because I looked in it really quick with the RCMP, and I told them I'll get back to them if there's more things missing, when I can actually take the boards off of it that we had to screw onto it to keep them out again. And the fella that broke into my shed, I know for sure is at Rotary House. That's where he lives. I had him on camera. He picked the snowiest day of the year, so my cameras were up blowing snow, but I know who he is. I just can't prove it in a court of law. And I'm not the only one. Like one of my neighbors, she was at work, her husband was in Calgary taking courses. They took $1,500 worth of stuff out of her house through the day. They took a laptop, a radio, and an iPad. And the neighbor next door to me, they broke into his car. They took his wallet, all his stuff that was in his wallet, his cash. He found the wallet at Rotary House. It was actually there on the counter with 40 or 50 other ones. And then they broke into the storage pods in his backyard. And he can't even put an estimate of what was in there because that wasn't even his things. They belonged to his mother. And I'm assuming it was box of dishes, because the next day, when I took my dog for a walk at the corner of the back parking lot by where you go on the sidewalk at the back hospital there were several broken boxes of dishes. So I'm assuming that's where those came from.
My yard is flooded, so I have a pump set up and a garden hose out to the alleyway where it nicely goes down. Yeah, they took my pump. They see the garden hose, they jump over the fence, they take the pump. This winter, they kicked in my fence to go grab some pop bottles, which were basically 100 feet from the alleyway, but they still trekked in. And unfortunately, it's a large pie-shaped lot, so I can't exactly watch them. I got cameras up. They don't care. They just look up at them and keep going. Anytime I'm outside, chipping away at the snow, I can hear people going up and down my alleyway with shopping carts full of crap. Last summer, I go by a house, and they're just a bunch of kids, 20-year-olds. They're spray painting bikes right in front of view of everyone. They just show up with bikes, they're spray painting them, and then they leave. I mean, I could see, once a year somebody does that, but it's basically a chop shop for bicycles.
So at Rotary House, too, in the back parking lot.
So you basically have organized crime here that's just like petty crime. So the city added that crime map, and I think people just stopped reporting this stuff because it's not worth the hassle. So I don't have a solution other than like bomb Rotary.
Yeah.
Because that seems like, is it actually accomplishing anything good? Because my attitude is it just enables people to keep their addiction going. It helps them network with other people to do this. Because my neighbor, who the police, they're always there. The police were there, walking around with shotguns. About an hour after the cops are gone, there's literally a powwow. 15 different people show up. And it's not just all guys. 2/3 of them were women. So, I mean, probably prostitution going on, lots of breaking into cars. I know the city tries to just make it the RCMP's problem, but you know the Rotary is supposed to be making things better.
Got
Is there
about
any proof of that?
10 seconds or so. So is there anything additional that you wanted to add?
Would you like our lists of things?
So I'll take that as a no. I'll have opportunity for any questions from council. I don't see anybody ringing in. So Rotary House is an independent organization that is run by the Wapiti Dorm Society. It has its own board of directors and its own staff, and is not run by the city, per se. The RCMP are paid for through your property taxes, and this council and past council have supported adding additional RCMP. In terms of making it the RCMP's problem, it is their job to enforce the laws, and city council's job to decide how many people we need to enforce the laws. So just in terms of who has responsibilities to do the different parts of the equation here, I guess that's kind of where the different responsibilities lie. I think one of the challenges that you identified about being able to identify things in a court of law, I guess that is sort of a general principle in Canada, that we need to be able to identify somebody as being guilty of an actual crime, because I am 100% certain that your neighborhood isn't the only neighborhood where people have had their cars broken into or thefts have occurred. So there are some challenges in that.
I'm sorry, but I have cameras up that watch the street. I don't think too many neighborhoods have them going back and forth with shopping carts all night, walking across the road for 15 minutes, coming back with a stolen bike, dropping it in front of people's cars, going to the drug shack. That's constant, like all night. This goes on 24/7. It doesn't stop. And if something isn't done about Rotary House, like we are getting to the point that we're going to be I'm putting up barbed wire along my fence. I'm putting an electric fence. Outside all day by myself. And I have watched them unload their shopping carts. They've got axes this long, big double-bladed ones, and they're beating on the shopping carts. I found homemade weapons. I've heard them yelling that they're going to stab everybody with their knife. Like, I live there. I have to walk there. My little dog likes to go visit the daycare kids at the hospital. I go by there. And no, I'm not going to get killed because I'm taking my dog for a walk. And I'm not going to get killed and mugged because I'm in my backyard. I'm sorry, but that just doesn't cut it. Something's got to get done.
Question. So realistically, what could the city do to make the Rotary House, I don't know, get their act together, have security guards, or maybe even CN Rail put a giant, 50-foot Trump wall, something like that? I mean...
Well, I don't know if administration, there is also a bit of a seasonal nature to these kind of concerns. My experience has been that certainly we see them intensify and get worse in the summer months. That's my entire time on council. It's something that has come around. And I know that our administration does do some planning to ensure that in those warmer summer months where it's easier to be doing outdoor activities that might have an impact on neighborhoods, that administration often will take some steps to be proactive and try to address those. So I don't know if our Director of Community Safety would have any perspective on any active steps administration might be taking. Mr. Manuel?
But my bikes were taken December 31st.
Sure. And so there was a question that I was asked. I'm going to ask our city administration to see if they can provide a little bit of perspective in answer to your question. Thank you. Mr. Manuel?
Yep, thank you. So certainly the concerns you're raising are concerns that we've heard for a number of years, right? And concerns that probably the two of you have raised with the RCMP in the past as well, with the city. So understanding that, there is a number of things that are actually occurring at Rotary House right now to address what were some of the prevalent conditions that existed there, such as overcrowding, the makeup, and general operations. Following the delegation here, I can meet with you guys outside and kind of give you a breakdown of what those specific things are. But aside from that, and I guess just for council's awareness, enforcement services, the RCMP, community social development, Rotary, the province, there's a number of stakeholders involved right now in a strategy to, it was initiated by essentially the seasonal influx of activity that we kind of see in public spaces, but it correlates to what you're experiencing year round a little bit right now, because some of the strategies that we plan on deploying to minimize some of the impacts that are being experienced from theft, social disorder, those sorts of things are exactly what we're trying to get to the root cause of. Are we going to be able to eradicate it all? No. But is it acceptable at its current levels in what we saw last year? No, it wasn't. So we do have a number of things at play. Some of the very things that you've suggested, security at Rotary, it's there, but it can be certainly refined and some best practices incorporated. Fencing with CN, there's ongoing discussions now that are occurring regarding that, extending the fence, changing the, I'm aware that boards get kicked out and those sorts of things. So staying on top of those. We have previously looked at plans for the field behind your homes. Now, the conversations around that have gone a different direction, but clearly we're aware that something has to happen as far as the use goes and making sure it's not, really facilitating adverse activities. So I can touch base with you guys a little bit further after the delegation here. I'll get your information so we can follow up more. But there is a different approach going to be taken this spring. It's now underway. It's at this point, it's actually concentrated a little bit more on this side of the fence as opposed to your side of the fence, but it's certainly something that we can talk about.
Okay, I see Councillor Bressie in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Thanks for coming in and keeping this top of mind. That's important that people do that when they've got parties in our community. And the big purchase I'm making this week is I need to put my spring tires on, and the impact wrench in my garage, along with some other things, went missing over the last couple of months. So I definitely feel I've been impacted by that as well. Though one other thing I will mention is I think that there are things that Mr. Manuel explained to you that the city's working on, but also there are things that are going on in terms of one of the issues is overcrowding at a Rotary House, which we're asking for funding for. Another issue we've struggled with in the past is lack of Crown prosecutors here in Grande Prairie, and there's a provincial piece to this as well. And I really hope as we're going into provincial election that you'll help our local candidates know that you're absolutely right to come talk to us as municipal elected leaders, but I also hope that you'll talk to those who hope to represent us in the legislature as well.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. I don't see anybody else in the queue right now. So as you heard with the other delegations, we deal with delegation business towards the end of our agenda. I heard Mr. Manuel say that after your presentation, he would be happy to catch up with you, make sure that he has your contact information to provide you some additional details on the steps the city's taking this spring. Okay. Thank you both for being here to present and raise the issue for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening.
Was there anybody else that wished to come forward with any other community-related matter other than that which is the subject of a public hearing? I don't see anybody rushing the stage, so I have a feeling everybody else is here for the public hearing. So we'll close our delegation portion of our agenda and we'll move on to item 6.1, amendments to the Vision West Business Park Outline Plan and Land Use Bylaw. I call the public hearing to order and look to administration for a brief introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So tonight we're considering two bylaws to amend the Land Use Bylaw and the Vision West Area Structure Plan, Outline Plan, to rezone from public service to general industrial. The subject site is on the west side of town, just a bit south of Highway 43, between 97 and 99th Avenue. And it is a parcel of municipal reserve land that was acquired through the development of the Vision West Outline Plan. So the item was previously heard on December 3rd, 2018, and the Outline Plan amendment was defeated at second reading. However, no readings were given to the Land Use Bylaw amendment, so there is a new bylaw number for the Outline Plan amendments, but it is the same Land Use Bylaw amendments. So a bit of background on the parcel. It is municipal reserve, which is a specific land designation on title. And what that indicates is that it is land that the city acquired through the subdivision process for public uses, including parks, recreation facilities, or school board purposes. The proposed use for this site is a bus maintenance facility for the Catholic School Board. And so that would fall under the school board purposes, use identified in the Municipal Government Act. So the rezoning is required to accommodate this facility. As you can see on the illustration here, the subject parcel is surrounded by industrial land and a bit of heavier commercial just to the north. So the industrial use is appropriate for the context. In terms of recreation needs, there were no immediate recreation needs identified for this site. The Joint Recreation Master Plan recommends taking municipal reserve in industrial areas for future recreation facilities. So a use could be identified at a later date if the land remained in the inventory. Some additional information was requested previously, and so these items aren't typically part of a public hearing consideration for rezoning. However, due to the unique nature of this application and the fact that it's city-owned land, this information is being provided. So the facility would be used to maintain a fleet of approximately 60 vehicles. That includes buses, but also maintenance vehicles like trucks and vans. The bus routes that would be beginning from this facility access all residential neighborhoods in the city, and they're fluid, so they change depending on demand. There isn't a route map that I was able to provide. And so there is some service to rural areas, but it is mainly for services within the city. Some drawings were requested, and so they were provided in the report, but also in the presentation I just included the site plan here, so you can see the proposed development only takes up approximately half of the site, so the other half could potentially be used for freezer expansion or other uses. But the main part of the development is in the southern portion. The rendering here just illustrates what the proposed building is. However, the rezoning process does not guarantee exactly what the building will look like, and the design could change during the development approval stage. This is purely for information. And so administration's recommendation is that council give all 3 readings to the proposed bylaws in order to support the continued operations of the Grande Prairie Catholic School Board. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. DeRoche. Any questions for administration at this time from council? Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just a question for administration on this. I'm just wondering if you can let me know what sort of inventory the city has in this industrial and nature kind of style of land within the city's current inventory.
Through the mayor. So though it is city policy to take municipal reserve and industrial land, it rarely occurs, and so we have a very minimal supply. This is the only lot within an industrial area that I can think of offhand, though there may be more.
Okay. And just another question for administration. I guess just I've heard through a few people, but I'm not sure if this is clear, but correct me, with the city service center currently now, how utilizes that site, and are we going to need future space for that at all?
Mr. DeRoche?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I can't speak on behalf of facilities. From what I know, the site is well used at the moment, and as the city grows, we will definitely need additional facilities similar to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeRoche, I had a question just in terms of the land. So tonight we're basically being requested to approve rezoning and associated amendments with that. What's the process for the actual disposal of the land, or sort of the creation of a lot there? Is the school district asking for the entire lot, or are they asking for the sort of southerly portion that was shown on the site plan?
Perhaps the applicant will be able to provide a clearer answer. My understanding is that we wouldn't be disposing of the MR, but we would have an agreement allowing the school board to use it, whereas the disposition of the land requires removing the MR designation.
So it would stay in that designation, and it would be between the city and the school board to define how much of that parcel they'd be able to utilize?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So MR remains on title. In order to remove that designation, it requires a specific process that includes a public hearing. And so the actual use of the land and how much of the land will be provided to the school board for use would be part of the specific terms of that agreement.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Platt, you thought of something else?
Sorry. Thanks, Mayor Given. Just another question for administration. Do we have an approximate value of what we think this land would be worth?
Mr. DeRoche or Mr. Glavin, anybody have that kind of information?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Given. Off the top of my head, the rates for industrial land in that particular business park, I think, is around $450,000 an acre for similar type land. However, because it is municipal reserve land, it's not something that we would be able to market to a developer or to an end user aside from those designated as users under municipal reserve, unless, of course, we disposed of the municipal reserve land to provide that. However, that's not a typical practice that we would have. Typically, if we're taking municipal reserve, it is for municipal purposes.
So, and I guess just on that, with us switching it to a general industrial, does that switch that?
Through the mayor. So the rezoning is separate from the municipal reserve designation. Municipal reserve is a designation on the title that indicates that this land is specifically set aside for public uses, including parks, recreation facilities, or school board purposes. And so the rezoning is actually a separate process, and it's to allow for a development permit to be issued for this type of use on the land.
Thank you.
So it would still stay as MR on title.
Yes, the MR designation would remain on title.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Drosch. Okay, so it looks like we've gone through the queue for now. We'll have another opportunity, Council, for questions arising before we conclude the public hearing. This would be the opportunity for anybody that wanted to come and speak to the public hearing to come forward. I see our delegation from the Catholic School District. Mr. Gurman, if you wanted to come forward and address Council and provide the district's perspective. And I don't know, we can pull up extra chairs too if more of your team is going to come forward. Okay.
Come up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Carl Gurman, Superintendent of Grande Prairie Catholic. It's our proposal that we would construct a maintenance facility, a maintenance and bus facility on this piece of land. This piece of land is somewhat unique, although the value might be in the range of $400,000 an acre. That would result in the land being solid clay where you can build slab on grade. This current facility, or this current piece of land, has been used as a dugout, and so it was backfilled with a lot of soil, so it would not have the same value that it currently would have in the rest of the Vision West subdivision. In fact, some of the test holes that we did and supplied the information to City Admin has the depth up to 9.3 meters of soil in there. So as you know, it's more difficult to build on soil, and so to build a facility, you basically have to elevate it and support it above the land and let the land flex up and down underneath it. That's why it makes sense for us to build, because we don't have the cost of land and we wouldn't incur the cost, but you do have to incur an extra cost for the structural slab to build the facility. It's our goal to build an 8,500 square foot facility that also has another 2,500 square feet on the top. We continue to be a jurisdiction that grows, and we would use it for maintenance. We would use it for some buses, and we would also use it for our fleet vehicles that our maintenance staff has. We currently are asking to use half of that site with the possibility to use more of that site in the future. We do run 105 bus routes, although a lot of them are contracted, and of those 105 bus routes, 78 are actually shared with our partner boards throughout the area. We transport approximately 11,500 kilometers a day, or 2 million kilometers a year. We are a jurisdiction that meets the needs of about 5,400 kids. 15% of those are county kids. And those county kids come into the city for services, for educational services. We are hoping to try to still use this construction season to try to build a facility. The reason for that is that the construction season is a little slow right now in the Grande Prairie area, and this would also add to the Grande Prairie economy, and it would also provide us with a probably pretty good price point to build on that facility. As you're aware, it's municipal reserve, which means the land underneath of it stays under the city, the same way in which we build a school. We own the school, you guys own the land underneath.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mr. Gurman. Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Could you just give us a bit of a peek at why this is needed in your operations? What right now, what having this new facility allows you guys to do that you're not doing now or helps with?
Yeah, currently we're renting a space and have been renting a space since 2004 in the old AGT facility. So that's a 5,000 square foot facility that basically has no yard. If you look at the cost of rent over a period of 10 years, we've spent over $1 million on rent. And so the wise use of taxpayers' dollars would have us actually build a facility, and we would have payback over a period of time, because School jurisdictions are probably not going away, and there's going to be continued to be more kids, and so we feel it's important to spend now and have a capital investment in the city, and then we could get rid of our rent costs over time.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Mr. Gurman, can you just clarify for me, at this time, are you seeking to secure the entire site or just that southerly half? I guess it's a similar question to what I asked Mr. Drosh.
Right. When we met with city administration, we indicated that we would be looking at the southern half of that site, and we tried to position the shop on the site so that there would be less structural issues in terms of building on that site. So we've tested all around that subdivision area to determine where's the best place to put the site, and SPA Engineering decided to put it on that southern part of the site right where it is. You would have to be aware that if somebody would build on that site, it would be very difficult to probably pave most of that site or try to put concrete on that site because the soil flexes up and down.
Sure. So just to be clear, that would be something that would be important to me, that the city retains. I guess ownership is not exactly right, because I guess we retain ownership of the land in any case, but that we retain control of that north half of the site, because there are certainly municipal purposes that could be challenging to locate in other locations that this could be appropriate for. I know at least one that we spoke about originally when we secured the site from the developer was things like a dog park, which are relatively low intensity, don't require significant capital infrastructure, but need space. And are not always welcomed next door to people's houses, surprisingly. So I guess that's my interest here, is in retaining that ability for the city to look for a low intensity use like that. And so is that your understanding that it really, this agreement that this district is looking for is to secure that south half of the site? South half of the site, and north staff stays within the city's purview of what they want to do with it. Okay, thanks very much for that clarification. Any other questions? Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Gavin. Just a question. So you're looking at about an 8,500 square foot shop when it's all said and done. And, mentioning you're in 5,000 feet now without a lot of storage space. I'm just kind of curious of why you need 3 acres, because that would leave you guys with about 2.5 acres of storage, potentially, of space. That's a lot of equipment. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could have a little bit smaller space potentially, or why the 3 acres was the number that you guys needed.
We're looking at 3 acres when we did a comparison to other school jurisdictions across the province. So by the time you add your fleet vehicles in, or any sort of buses, currently at the space that we have now, we can't park everything on site. And as you're aware, often companies will put stuff behind a fence just to secure the property and to make sure the property stays safe. We're also looking at the possibility of expanding that shop. So if you have a look at a diagram that we attached with you, it does provide for future growth, and SPA designed it so that we could continue to build and add additional bays onto that shop. So we see that as a long-term growth for us, and we built the facility in a way in which we could easily expand on it and not have a high cost for it. So there is a variety of pieces of equipment that we use, and we store stuff on site, and we've had a look at different things, and we believe that's the size that we would need.
Thank you.
Mowers, vehicles, buses, bricks, lots of different things, just like you do at your city service center.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Councillor Platt. I don't see anybody else in the queue with any questions for the delegation. Is there anything else you want to add, Mr. Chairman?
No, just to highlight the size of our jurisdiction. So we are an operation that spends $70 million a year, which puts us on par to the county of Grande Prairie for their operational budget. So sometimes people think that both school jurisdictions, or the 3 school jurisdictions in the area, aren't large players, but in fact, we spend similar to what the county does on operations. So put that in perspective in terms of what the county needs for equipment, and then you get an idea of what the Catholic School Board needs for equipment both now and in the future.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Gurman. Sorry, Councillor O'Toole, did you have a question for the delegation?
Just got 2 questions. How many people would be employed on that property when it opens up? And what are the hours of operation?
Probably about 20 people on that site. And the hours of operation, we start at 7 a.m. and generally we're done about 6 p.m., although we have call-outs and evening work that also occurs.
Thank you.
Okay, this time for real, I don't see anybody else in the queue. Council make a liar out of me, maybe. But thanks very much, Mr. Gurman, for being here. And thanks to the rest of your board representatives that came to be here this evening. Appreciate the fact that you guys also have meetings, but we appreciate you being here to be able to speak to this issue.
This is the one time we're not scheduled against you for board meetings, so it's perfect.
Imagine that. Wow. Was there anybody else that wished to speak with respect to the public hearing for the amendments to the Vision West Business Park Outline Plan and Land Use Bylaw amendments? I don't see anybody else coming forward. Council, were there any final questions for administration? Councillor Bressie?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm just curious, as traffic was looked at in this area, are there any concerns if the northern part of this did get developed? Can the road infrastructure handle traffic in and out? Are there any concerns with sterilizing the north end or limiting what we could do on the north side of this parcel with this development on the south side?
Mr. Drosch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That would be a question more for our engineering department. My understanding is that the north side would still be developable with its access onto 99th Avenue, but I can't say for sure.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The road will support capacity. It has enough capacity to support typical industrial development on the north side of the parcel in the future, so I don't have any concerns about capacity and traffic flows for the future.
Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Erwin. This, I guess, is a question for Ministry, maybe an educational thing for me, but just to give me an understanding, so there was 5,400 students within the Catholic school system, which about 85% were local. Do we have an idea of how many students are in all like in Grande Prairie in general, just so I can understand kind of how much is Catholic and public and private?
So I'm going to actually look at the Catholic board folks, because I'm sure Carl does know, but I want to say that it's about another 9,000 in the Grande Prairie Public District, 8,500 in the Grande Prairie Public District. And then Peace Wapiti has 2 schools, and the Francophone School District has 1 school. So you're probably not adding another 1,000 students between those 3, 2,000 students between those 3 schools. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the assist. Was that it, Councillor Platt? Okay, I don't see anybody else with any questions for administration, so we will close the public hearing and we move on to business arising. I would look for Councilmember to give a first reading to bylaw C 1353-2. Councillor Thiessen?
All right, seems like my other councilmates are a bit slow on the trigger.
You were just happen to be the fastest in front of 4 other people.
Oh, wow, that was 4 seconds too late, guys. I would move that council give first reading to bylaw C-1353-2, being an amendment to the Vision West Business Park Outline Plan, and to bylaw C-1260-102, being an amendment to the land use bylaw.
I think, Councillor Thiessen, and I'll look to
separate it.
So we're going to need to do 6 different readings, or actually 8 different readings. We want to do all 3 readings of these tonight. But so we have to deal with the and it's written in our.
Yeah, I will remake the motion just that we give first reading to bylaw C-1353-2, being an amendment to the Vision West Business Park Outline Plan.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Mr. Drosch, did you have something for us just in terms of process?
Sorry, Mayor Given. So the reason the recommendation for the motion was worded in this way is to ensure that both items get first reading to open the public hearing. And so it is possible to combine them for a first reading like this. However, we separated out the other motions.
Okay. Okay. Well, so let's we will go with first reading of 1353-2. They're all going to have to get all their readings anyways if council chooses to move forward. So this is first reading for 1353-2, which is the amendment to the Business Park Outline Plan. There's no discussion or debate on first reading, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote on first reading. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
All right, thank you, Mayor Given. I'd move that council give second reading to bylaw C-1353-2.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. So motion for second reading is open for discussion and debate. Do I have anyone in the queue for discussion and debate? Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'm having a hard time with this. I really want to support. I want to support construction in Grande Prairie because I know that that industry grossly needs some work. I also want to support the Catholic school district. Where I'm having a hard time with this is that I'm very worried about the city giving away land for nothing, and very worried that we're going to need this land in the future. And so I'm struggling a little bit of half of this land goes away to about 1/3 of the student population to represent the school district. So if the public school district come in or the other school districts come in, I always joke around with you guys about this, but if I have 2 children, I want to treat them the same. And we don't physically have enough land to help everybody. And so I'm really struggling with us giving away 3 acres for free. I can appreciate Mr. Germain's comments that this land might have some challenges. But, you know, if we use Mr. Glavin's numbers of 400 or 450,000 an acre, this land should still be worth $300,000 an acre. It should have some sort of value. So I feel like we're giving $1 million to the school district. And if we're going to do that, then we probably should have our ducks in a row that when the other two school districts come and ask, we probably are going to have to, or potentially may have to help them as well. So I'm just really struggling with the city giving away land for nothing when we might need it later on. And I do think we're going to need more land later on. I hear a lot of bottlenecking issues at the city service center now. And if our city goes through a major growth curve here in the next 3 to 5 years, like we're all hoping it does, I feel like we're going to end up buying land from industry when we gave this land away. So that's why I'm not supporting it. It's not that I don't want to support the construction and everything. I just feel that the city and the residents have to make sure we get value for this type of stuff.
Thanks, Councillor Plott. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I don't see it as us giving away land for free because I don't see it as our land right now. My understanding of the Municipal Government Act's intent is that when development happens, we hold land in trust either for the city or for school board purposes. That's how I interpret the intent of it anyways. And in my mind, it becomes city land when we build a park or another municipal facility on it. That's when we own it. Until then, we're just holding it in trust for the best public use we can find. So I could definitely respect, and I'd be willing to entertain thoughts on, is this the best use for this? Are there other uses municipally that it should go towards? But it's not that we're giving it away for free. It's that we're deciding that if we go forward with this, it's that we're deciding this is the most pressing need in our community right now. And if that's the case, then it would be completely inappropriate to want value for it because it's land we're holding in trust, not land we actually own, as far as I'm concerned anyways.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I don't see anybody else in the queue on second reading. I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that council have third reading of bylaw C-1353-2.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. So this is a motion to have third and final reading of the outline plan, or the outline plan amendment here this evening. In order for us to have third and final reading, this motion must pass unanimously. Otherwise, third and final reading would come back at our next council meeting. So is there any discussion or debate onto the merits of having third and final reading here this evening? I don't see anybody in the queue, so I would say encourage council to support the motion to have third and final reading. Obviously, each member of council can vote their conscience, but in terms of a matter of process, ideally we can deal with a piece of business that the outcome looks pretty clear. Hopefully we can deal with that in a way that's expedient and saves all parties involved some time and allows us to get closer to construction and utilizing a construction season. So I would encourage council to vote for third and final reading, or sorry, to have third and final reading. I don't see anybody else in the queue with any comments, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that council give third reading to bylaw C-1353-2, being an amendment to the Vision West Business Park Outline Plan.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen, for that motion for third and final reading. Open for discussion and debate. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I believe as part of budget last year, we were going through a facilities review of all of the different facilities we have. I'm just kind of curious if we have an idea in the next few years if our city is going to be needing more land. And I'm looking at things like, Mayor Gibbon mentioned future dog park. I'm more concerned, are we going to have enough space to store our own equipment? We have a long-term transit master plan that has our own storage for buses. I'm just very concerned. I'm not getting a sentiment that I'm going to suddenly switch a 7-1 vote. I just really want to remind everybody, we just come on a strategic planning, and one of the things that I took away from that is maybe sometimes council needs to have a little bit more discipline on how we do our budgeting and how we allocate our lands. And this is another opportunity for us, as all I can appreciate Councillor Bressie's, maybe the land doesn't have value. I don't think land never not has value. I think land always has value. And I just want to remind us that we're making a decision today that I hope we aren't regretting in 2 or 3 years. And I also, as much as I can appreciate 3 acres is a good sized site, I'm personally building on an 1.5 acres that has 16,000 square feet of space that could store about 80 vehicles outside. So I'm questioning whether we need 3 acres or not. And so I'm just struggling with giving away land for free here, guys. And so I'm hoping that somebody else will make a friendly amendment. If not, I would look at making it, but I'd like to see if council has any other comments first.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Plott. Any discussion or debate on Councillor Plott's point that he's raised? I don't see anybody in the queue. Councillor Plott.
Okay, so I'll just make a friendly amendment that's
it's just an
amendment, sorry, that we only allocate 2 acres of land, and that this could be revisited in time to see if they need 3 acres. I think we can position their building in a way that they could have that. But this is a way to protect 1 acre of this land and see if they fully need this land over time. 3 acres is an awful lot of land when you're parking buses, and I can appreciate they have a lot of equipment. That's an awful lot of land. So I would urge you to support that we only give 2 acres of land at this point and reconsider this in time whether we need to give the 3rd acre or not.
Thanks very much for that amendment, Councillor Plott. Is there any discussion or debate on Councillor Plott's proposed amendment to reduce the area of land by 1 acre? Councillor Thiessen?
Well, thank you, Mayor Given. I'm just maybe this is for administration, maybe it's for the Catholic School Board. What does that do for the site configuration by shrinking the amount of available land? Would they still be able to build, or would it constrain it incredibly?
Through the mayor, so just on kind of a procedural basis, this is a rezoning for the specific site, and so it doesn't specify how much of the land they can use. That is a separate agreement and a separate process from this. This is just land use designation for what can be done on the parcel.
Okay.
Sorry, thanks for the question, Councillor Thiessen and Mr. Drosch. And I was just also consulting with the city manager. I think in matter of process, Councillor Plott, I think I'm going to rule the amendment out of order because the item in front of us in terms of the outline plan amendment doesn't deal with area. I would suggest that if that was an issue that council or a council member wanted to attempt, that would be more appropriate as a follow-up motion to the others at the end, giving direction to administration in terms of the agreement that administration would negotiate for the use of the parcel between management and the school district. So right now we're dealing with zoning issues, and it is the parcel. There's no subdivision. That's the city manager informed me there's no subdivision at this stage involved. And so if the motion is direct administration to only provide 2 acres, then that would probably be separate from this. So I'm going to ask you to I'm going to overrule your amendment just on consultation with administration. And if you choose to do something like that, we can do that at the end of the 2 public hearing items. Councillor Bressie?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Question for administration on Municipal Government Act requirements. Right now, my understanding is that with municipal reserve, since we're giving it to school board, they can use this as school board purposes for whatever the school board wants. But are we even able to use municipal reserve for our own purposes if we want to use an industrial process? I think that they might have more freedom with municipal reserve land than we actually have. But am I recalling that correctly?
Mr. Drosch?
So through the mayor, you're correct. And so the way the Municipal Government Act is worded, the only reason we're able to accommodate this is because it's so vague in what school board purposes are. However, as a municipality, we could only build a park or a recreation facility. There is a new item in the MGA called Community Services Reserve, and the process for acquiring that is a bit odd because it's if a site is designated for a future school or other purpose and then that purpose is no longer needed, then the city could develop a facility on the footprint of the potential school on the site for something like a maintenance facility or fire hall.
So I think I heard the short answer to your question is under the current act and under the way that this land was taken, no, the city couldn't build a maintenance shop there. Is that correct, Mr. Drosch?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's the short answer. Sorry.
Planners. But yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll go on to 3rd and final reading. Thanks, Councillor Plott, with bearing with us there while we figure out the right way to address your motion. You still have an opportunity to make that if you wish. And so we'll move to the vote if there are no other comments on 3rd and final reading of Bylaw C 1353-2. Call for the vote. Please vote. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen, did you want to carry on? Are you up for all?
No, I'm good. I
9 readings?
Sucked back a hull, so we're good. I would move that council give first reading to Bylaw C-1260-102, being an amendment to the land use bylaw.
Okay, so that's a motion for first reading. No discussion and debate on that motion. I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that council give second reading to bylaw C-1260-102.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. So that's a motion for second reading. This is the land use bylaw amendment, which speaks to the zoning of the parcel, not the size of the parcel. So again, this is a land use bylaw amendment dealing with what the zoning is on this site. Is there any other discussion or debate? Questions or comments? I don't see any. Then I will call for the vote on second reading. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that council have third reading of bylaw C-1260-102.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. So again, this is a motion to have third and final reading here tonight. In order for us to move on to third and final reading, this motion must pass unanimously. Is there any discussion or debate as to the merits of having third and final reading? Again, seeing nobody ringing in, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Councillor Thiessen.
All right, so I would move that council give third reading to bylaw C-1260-102, being an amendment to the land use bylaw.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. That motion is open for discussion and debate. Are there anything arising with this motion for the amendment to the land use bylaw? And seeing nobody ringing in, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. That handles all of our amendments to the outline plan and to the land use bylaw. Councillor Plott, if you wish to make your motion or attempt that motion, now would be the time to do it before we move on to any other business. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'd like to make a motion that we direct administration to work with the Catholic School Board to see if we can utilize this site better and potentially only give up 2 acres. I'm looking at the site plan that is on there now, and it kind of looks like a third of it to the one side is kind of just future. So I don't know if this one would hurt their plans. So.
Sure. So I think we need to be more specific, Councillor Plott. I think if your direction is to direct administration to provide no more than 2 acres, I think that's what we need to say. You've had
Okay, so I would direct administration to work with the Catholic School District to allocate only 2 acres of land.
Okay, I think that motion is a little bit clearer and easier to action for administration, and is open for discussion and debate. And I will, before others are ringing in, I'll just say that in spite of helping you frame your motion and get it at the right spot, I'm not going to support it. I would be a bit concerned about us from the outside judging the work of the school district and their engineering team, who have actually worked to sort of identify all their needs and their purposes. I have confidence that that was appropriate, and I'm a bit concerned in council deciding that we have a better view of this than the district and the district's engineer who's been hired to do this job specifically. So I won't be supporting the motion. Is there any other discussion or debate? Councillor O'Toole?
Yeah, Mayor Given, I won't be supporting this either. I think when you get close to 70 or possibly 80 school buses in there, you've got equipment that they mentioned, as well as other vehicles. I think it's going to be pretty crowded. They may feel that it is adequate, but I still think it's going to be a fairly crowded. It's one thing parking a vehicle that size, another thing to getting it out of there after. So I think they do need the room, and so I still will not be supporting this.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Clayton?
Thanks for giving question for administration, if that's okay.
Sure.
So can you tell me, Mr. Drosch, if to your knowledge in this engineering sort of background study on the space required for this land, how much consideration was given to the potential future growth of the Catholic School Board? I know there's other sites that they have identified to be looking at to building in the fairly short term. And so based on the needs, is there space on this land for growth? Assuming there'd be more school buses, etc.
Mr. Drosch?
Through the mayor, I apologize, Councillor Clayton. I don't have that specific information. Typically, we don't look at the geotechnical during a rezoning, and my considerations were mainly for the land use. It is possible that it could be expanded to the north. Like the southern part of the site, the actual subsoils would be a challenge for construction. I don't know to what extent.
Councillor Clayton, your question was slightly different in terms of the site that's shown on the site plan.
And so to sort of bring the question to more context on the motion, I guess my concern is if there's not consideration for growth, how accurate are the assessment for needs? And so to, whether I'm in support of Councillor Plot's motion or not depends on how realistic the needs for this space right now. If there is room budgeted per se for growth, then maybe all of the land capacity isn't currently required at this time. So I want to know, based on the engineering, if we're expecting that this is for an immediate need, is it going to last 5 years? Is it going to last 10 years? Is it going to last 2 years? And so that's where my needs assessment on the amount of land comes into consideration.
Mr. Drosch, do you have anything on that?
To the mayor, sorry, I am not able to answer that question.
Sure, fair enough. That's probably actually for the user, and I don't know if Mr. Gurman would care to sort of address that if you'd like to come forward to the delegation table. And you can. I did hear you reference the ability to expand the shop if needed, but maybe you want to talk to the area that the development is going to use.
I'm not sure if it's possible to put up the diagram of the bus shop, specifically the one that shows the bus turns.
So the site plan, Mr. Drosch, can you show the site plan from the council package? Is there somebody else that has the council package up on there? Actually, if you have the site plan there, you can stick it on that. No, you can just stick it on that plastic, and we have a camera that will zoom in on it. And we're willing to guarantee that it'll be the wrong way up the around. So, yeah. So we will zoom out. There you go.
This way?
There you go. That's perfect.
If you have a look inside your package, this would be the side of the facility right here that faces ATCO Electric. When we worked with the city engineering department, they specifically wanted us to align our in and out with ATCO's in and out. That's one of the things that engineering services requires with the city. So if we were to go from 3 to 2 and shrink on one side, you would no longer be aligned. The other part that you see here is you've got a turning radius here for buses to basically go in and out of that space. And so if you would go to 3 to 2, you would very much tighten the turning radius and the ability to store. So right along here, you can see there's storage. Bringing it right up here, right by the roadway, might be difficult. And all of a sudden, the entrance in and the entrance out might become too crowded and not align with what engineering services was looking for. So it does provide for future growth. Councillor Clayton and others, it's currently not needed today, but it would be needed in, let's say, in 10 years. And so what we wanted to do is do it once and finish it and not come back to this project.
Mr. Gurman, while you're there, your site plan has a little bit different information. Ours doesn't seem to show the stalls. So does that, on that west side, does it show the number of stalls? Like I see bus figures there.
Right here?
No, on the west side of the property on 124th Street. Ours doesn't have the bus figures, and so I don't know if it talks about how many buses is it intended to build a park there.
It looks like there's about 15 to 20, Mr. Mayor, right off the bat. And sometimes if you have a look at where First Student parks their buses, they line them up one after another, and then they just have to pull them out in sequence. So right now it would be for a limited number of vehicles, and it is designed for future growth. So just like how you've built your facilities, you build them for long-term growth. You don't build them for today's need.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Does that get to more to the nature of your question?
I think so, yep. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr.
Mayor.
Councillor Bressie?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I can't support this motion, although I really understand the concern underlying it in terms of, do we have space for what we need to do in the future? Do we have room to expand the service center, put up a transit barn in the future? I understand those are needs. At the same time, we don't know what those are yet. And again, I see it as we're stewards of this land for the best public good. We're stewards on behalf of not just the city, but also the school boards in the region. And I don't think a responsible steward looks at one need that's very clear and present and articulated, and another need that's not anywhere close to clear, present, and articulated, and says, well, we're gonna protect this from not being used right now in case we might need it in the future. So as good stewards, I think that it's the responsible thing to let this be used. I'd also just point out that this is really a government-to-government conversation we're having in terms of this is an entity governed by other elected officials. And I know when we tell the province that we've got a clear need in our community, we've done our due diligence to plan it out, I hope that they listen to us and they respect us and they trust us to do what we need to do as a governance body. And so I think that's the same respect that we should give to this other governance body here in our community that's also made up of elected officials. So I really appreciate the concern underlying this motion. I just can't support it.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Is there anybody else in the queue to speak to Councillor Plot's motion before I go to him to close? I don't see anybody else in the queue, and Councillor Plot's has waived off his opportunity to close. So we will move on to the vote on Councillor Plot's motion to direct administration to work with the school district to only utilize 2 acres of the site. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. I believe that handles all of the business related to this subject. Again, thanks very much to our Catholic District representatives who came out this evening to be able to participate. Certainly, you being here was able to answer a number of our questions that we wouldn't have been able to answer independently without you here. So thank you very much for that. So we'll move on to item 7.1, unfinished business, lending bylaw C-1396, loan to the Swan City Hockey Association. Council, we have done first reading of this lending bylaw at a previous council meeting, so we're on to second and third readings. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'd like to make a motion to give second reading to bylaw C-1396 as being the lending bylaw.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. This is a motion for second reading, so it is open for discussion and debate this evening. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion? Again, seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
I'd like to make a motion to give third reading to bylaw C-1396 being the lending bylaw.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on third reading? Again, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. That handles all of our unfinished business. We had no reports this evening, and that would take us to committee business and item 9.1. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that Council approve the minutes of the Community Living Committee meeting held Tuesday, March 12, 2019, as presented.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Is there any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Given. We had a couple items coming out for decision here with Council today. The first being an amendment to the Combative Sports Commission bylaw C-1173F. And I would move that Council give first reading to bylaw C-1173F, being an amendment to the Combative Sports Commission bylaw. Just to give a little context, I know it was included in the package, but the proposed amendments reflect changes to the medical requirements in order to make the commission current with our other commissions throughout North America. And the other proposed amendment will adjust the fee for judges in both professional and amateur bouts.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Is there any discussion? Oh, sorry, this is motion for first reading, excuse me. So we'll do first reading. I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that Council give second reading to bylaw C-1173F.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Now we can have any discussion or debate on second reading. Any discussion or debate on second reading? Councillor O'Toole.
Just some clarification. The medical requirements that are up for discussion tonight included hepatitis B surface antigen and surface antibody. We're removing the antibody out of this program as because of medical, it's redundant. And according to our medical professional, this is no longer needed as the hepatitis B surface antigen is sufficient. And as for the fees and judges, those are the fees that the bigger centers charge. We're not the big shows every couple of weeks or months. And so we've downplayed our fees to the promoter, and that's where that comes down. And it's accepted by our judges and for both professional and amateur. So it does meet the market of the Alberta province.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. I don't see anybody else in the queue for second reading, discussion, and debate, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Well, thank you, Mayor Given, and thank you, Councillor O'Toole, for adding that extra little bit of info. It always helps us make the best decisions. And to that, I would move that Council have third reading of bylaw C-1173F at this meeting.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Another one to have third and final reading. Any discussion or debate as to the merits of having third and final reading? Again, seeing nobody ringing in, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that Council give third reading to bylaw C-1173F, being an amendment to the Combative Sports Commission bylaw.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on third and final reading? Councillor O'Toole.
I want to clarify that we're not reducing the risk to any competitors. It's just a redundant bylaw. And I just want you to know that we had a combative sports event last weekend. One individual come in 18 pounds overweight. He signed a contract. We would not let him fight. We take our responsibility for the safety to the highest degree. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so I'll call for the vote on third reading. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen.
Back at her. Back to business. All right. So the next piece of business is for Council to endorse the Social Sustainability Framework. And to that, I would move that Council endorse the update to the Social Sustainability Framework. For anyone who doesn't know, or those watching at home, the framework is a roadmap for our community partners and stakeholders as to the kinds of programs and collaborations which can positively impact the lives of Grande Prairie residents, both now and in the future. And the Social Sustainability Framework is a document which will evolve as our community changes. And this current iteration has been informed by the priorities of our FCSS mandate, our 2019 to 2022 strategic plan, as well as our recently approved and endorsed community asset map. Through this, management has identified 2 investment priorities for our planning cycle of 2019 to 2022, and these are increasing investments in social inclusion, as well as increasing community capacity and collaboration, which I believe is something that Council has stressed as far as making our community a lot more livable place and a place that welcomes everybody. If you haven't had the chance to go through the document, it is a great document, and it even has certain midterm goals to achieve, and I think they're achievable goals. So for anyone out in the community who may not have read it, I'd strongly encourage you to read this, and I'd strongly encourage my council to endorse it as well.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing Councillor Friesen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I think this is a fantastic document. The 2 investment priorities of increased social inclusion and community capacity and collaboration are really in line with my feeling on how we need to move in the future. And I think this will help to inform some of our decision making as we go forward as well. So I'm delighted to see this and the priorities that came out of it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Anything else to highlight from that set of minutes, Councillor?
Oh, I'd love to highlight. We had a few delegations. Thank you, Mayor Given. One from Broadway Live Broadway, another from the Real Shorts Film Society, and one from the Disabled Transportation Society. We also got Director Service Area update, and some of the things that I highlighted here just to discuss is the Eastlink Centre had incredible usage increases for the past month in February, which saw almost 18% more scans in the weight room and field house compared to that of the previous year. Parks has closed down all outdoor hockey rinks, so if you're carrying your skates and you're going to a hockey rink today, despite the melting temperatures, that was closed on March 15th. So have to go to the indoor rinks, maybe take in Dave Barr or something in the meantime. Also, the 2018 Alberta Summer Games Board of Directors, they are having a legacy calculations on their agenda of meeting, and their staff are hosting a board development workshop in conjunction with Alberta Culture and Tourism on April 13th. The community is encouraged to go. The workshop is open to not-for-profits and is $25 a person. And registration for the workshop opened just last week, so should be good to go if you want to get some board training. Recreational program staff are also working with Inclusion Alberta to change literature around inclusion and are providing resources to support program participants where any needs are identified. Another update on our electric buses. So far, so good. They made it through the cold snap, so that was good news. They're still on the bus, and we've got lots of positive comments from our customers who are riding them. And so we look forward to maybe having more electric buses on the street in the future, and hopefully they'll hold up another winter. The last thing I'd like to just talk about is there was discussion around our entrance features. For my three other previous council mates, this is something that has been carried over from the previous council, and we're starting to get to work on as far as finding the right place for it and the right sign. So to that degree, committee gave direction to administration to have taken a community engagement process to see what kind of identities they may come up with for our sign and how people might identify with our city as they drive into our Fairland borders. So that is coming back to committee for a report after we do that community engagement, and that covers it for community living. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. We'll move on to corporate services. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I move the council approve the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held Tuesday, March 12th, 2019, as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
I've got two items to deal with, bylaw C14 and bylaw C1401. They may sound like we're going to rubber stamp them, but these are things that are demanded by the Alberta MGA, municipal government. And so we'll start off with a first. I move the council give bylaw C14 being the 2019 supplementary property assessment bylaw.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Motion for first reading. No discussion or debate, of course. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
I move that we give second reading to bylaw C1400.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Motion for second reading, bylaw C1400. Open for discussion and debate. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
And I move to have third reading of bylaw C1400 at this meeting.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. This is a motion again to have third and final reading of this bylaw here this evening. Is there any discussion or debate as to the merits of having third and final reading here this evening? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Councillor O'Toole.
And I move to give third reading to bylaw C1400, being the 2019 supplementary property assessment bylaw.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. This is a motion for third and final reading. Is there any discussion and debate? Again, seeing none, please vote. Thank you. That motion carries as well. Councillor O'Toole, I hope you got a drink of water.
No, look at that. She's bone dry.
You got another set to do. Okay.
I'm going to deal with 9.2.2, the 2019 supplementary property tax bylaw C-1401. I move the council give first reading to bylaw C-1401, being the supplementary property tax bylaw.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Motion for first reading. There's no discussion and debate. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
I move that we give second reading to bylaw C-1401.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Motion for second reading is open for discussion debate, and I see Councillor Bressy.
Well, thank you, Mayor Given. If you're passing two bylaws, you got to have some discussion. But really, the reason I wanted to speak up is my recollection from last year that I was so thrilled when I learned it is under the MGA, when this tax bylaw allows us to start taxing buildings that get completed throughout the tax year. Instead of, if we don't pass this, we only get to tax buildings as they were on December 31st of last year. And something I like about our practices is under the MGA, we could start dinging people these extra taxes as soon as they finish doing their building. But my understanding is our practice is we wait until they're actually getting their occupancy of that building. And that's often been our practice, my understanding from and recollection of last year. And that's something that when I heard, I liked to hear that we weren't being as on it as the MGA maybe lets us do, and helping people get that building full is something that I liked us doing.
Thanks, Councillor Bressy, and thanks for highlighting that point. I don't see anybody else in the queue for discussion or debate, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
I move that we have third reading of bylaw C-1401 at this meeting.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. You heard it. A motion to have third and final reading must pass unanimously. I don't see anybody in the queue with discussion or debate. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry unanimously. Councillor O'Toole.
And this should be the last one. I move that we give third reading bylaw C-1401, being the 2019 supplementary property tax bylaw.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. If you want to talk about misses in the amendments to the Municipal Government Act, this is the kind of thing that the Act should have given a municipality the ability to pass once, rather than every year having to do, this many readings for everything. Same as establishing the Downtown Association business tax rate. Those were things that the City of Grande Prairie specifically identified, and the province didn't bother to act on. So we get to do this in perpetuity every time until they change the Act again in another 20 years. Enjoy it. I will call for the vote on third and final reading. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole, anything else you want to highlight in that set of minutes?
We had the Director Services area update, and I'll just point out a couple things here. It's in the minutes, but corporate facility management, fall arrest training is going on, so there's lots of testing taking place at this point in time. Finance auditors have been on site since last week for our year-end work, and service delivery reviews are currently underway. We talked about the IT preparation for the RFP for printer services and procurement. There's 22 competitive bids out there on the open market from the City of Grande Prairie. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. So that was all of our committee business. I don't believe we had any items of correspondence, since we did have our delegation business. Our first delegation was Ms. Lambert English with respect to the monument for missing and murdered Indigenous women. I do have some council members in the queue. Councillor Thiessen is first in line.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that Council have the Mayor write a letter of support in regards to the Grande Prairie Friendship Centre's monument to missing and murdered Aboriginal women.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Next up was Ms. Quinn with her ideas Councillor Bressy.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I certainly appreciate the enthusiasm of people that have ideas, and I hope that Ms. Quinn got some good advice on places to help out in the community. At the same time, there were some cool ideas for us in there. I really do love the idea of a graffiti wall. That's something that I'll also point out got raised by the students at Hillside School when we were doing the engagement process of what they want to see in their community. And that's been a real winner in many communities. I don't think I've ever heard the idea, though, of giving it a weekly theme and getting somebody to start it off. And I've seen graffiti walls in other communities. I've never quite seen that, and that would be a cool way to do it. I also really like the idea of a onesie council meeting, and I would be all over that if we did that. So With that being said, I will move that we accept Ms. Quinn's presentation for information.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bressie. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Councillor Thiessen? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Please vote. That motion carries. And then we had finally our presentation from the two residents from the Hillside area. We'll look for a motion to receive for information or other. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that we receive the presentation for information.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. And I think that was all of our delegation business. Of course, the Catholic District was here for the public hearing. We have no notices of motion this evening, and so that'll take us to council member reports from our external agencies, boards, and commissions. And I think, Councillor Bressie, you were the only one that had any this evening, the Grande Prairie Regional Emergency Partnership and the Intercity Forum on Social Policy.
Great. Well, so yeah, I've got two reports for you. One was GPREP, and as I've shared before, the thing that GPREP's focusing on right now is emergency social services, where it's always been a well-honed machine to make sure that people's lives are immediately protected and properties protected by emergency response in the case of an event. But there hasn't been as much focus put in the past of you have a bunch of evacuees. Well, what the heck do you do with them when they're in this region? And so GPREP, thanks to some investment from our council and other councils in the region to fund a 1.5 year long position, is doing some work figuring out that emergency social services. And along those lines, a couple weeks ago, they held an exercise where there was a mock scenario. What it was just over the BC border, there was a very big fire. And despite them killing our economy, we decided to take in our BC neighbors. We had 450 of them show up in our region at the Entrex Center, and there were people pretending to be refugees. I got to be a middle-aged single mom, very anxious about her son. It was kind of fun getting to be rude and on my cell phone while I pretended to be the scenario, and her name was Sarah Jessica Parker. So you better believe I had swass. It was great. And I was very well received despite being rude. So it was fun to get to be an evacuee and see what that would look like in this scenario. And then after being this evacuee, I got to go in and I got to just eavesdrop on a meeting with the emergency social services folks talking in the middle of the scenario about how were they solving problems that were emergent. And there were definitely some hiccups that they were identifying, but not very major ones. And that's the reason we do these exercises, so that in the mock we can figure out where the friction points are so that we can take care of people when we need to. And seeing this exercise, I'm very, very, very confident that our region, if we ever have to accept evacuees or we have any of our own, that will show them good care and good hospitality. So that was a fun day for me to go to. The other thing I'll share is I was at the Intercity Forum of Social Policy last week. It being the middle of a provincial election, unfortunately no provincial representatives came. They all canceled on us when the writ got dropped. We saw a great discussion, and some of the highlights of our discussion was we heard about some of the initiatives Edmonton's up to in terms of collecting data and doing initiatives to combat gender-based violence. And there's some interesting things there that we can maybe learn from that I'd be happy to share later. The other significant things where we heard from the city of Calgary on their approach to cannabis and some of the discussions they've been having. And I thought the most interesting thing that they did was they claim, I don't know if it's true or not, but they claim that out of their cannabis, out of their cannabis laws, they've created a whole new system for registering development permits and business licenses online at the same time. And so they developed that specifically for cannabis stores, and now they've unrolled it into all their business licenses, all their development services. So it's a one-stop online window to get both those done at once. So as we're approaching talking about business licensing, that's something that I hope that's a system that we might learn from. So that was interesting, even if it wasn't too much social policy. So Calgary's excited about it. Like I said, don't know how true their claims are, but it was great hearing what they were excited about. Last presentation that was very helpful was we heard from representatives of CMHA, of the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And it was an interesting time to learn from them because within the 24 hours before this, the federal budget had just passed, with some significant housing initiatives in it. And also they had just signed a bilateral agreement with the province to pass on some funding, which they'd been working on for months, but had just been made public the night before. And so we got a very thick booklet of different programs they have that I'm excited to pass on to administration. But I don't think I realized before this how keen they are to get money out to municipalities and through municipalities. And I don't think I realized how many different programs there are. There's a lot of streams that my ears were perking up saying this one could be cool for Elders Caring Shelter. This could be cool for some of our conversations with UDI. This one could be cool for that. So I'm really excited that we're talking more about housing in our community. It's a really good time to talk about that. So that was a fun conversation that I'm excited to share more about.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bessey. I don't think we had any reports from any other reports from our external boards and commissions. So we'll start with Council Roundtable and Councillor Thiessen.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Given. Might as well get the long-winded guy out of the way first. I got lots to talk about. You don't see it in the minutes, but I had 2 pages worth of events over the last month, so it was pretty fun. But I'm going to highlight a couple that are more recent. On March 15th, I had the honor of being able to give greetings on behalf of the mayor and the city council at the 20th annual Spirit Seekers Youth Conference and Aboriginal Leadership Awards. Just to speak to that, I'd like to congratulate the organizers for 20 years of success. Delane Lambert English, she was here earlier tonight. She didn't stick around to see if we were going to endorse her, but she's still watching at home. Congratulations to you and your team. You did a fabulous job. To speak of that, it was the most youth that they had ever had registered at the Spirit Seekers Conference, and also the largest recorded round dance since they started doing round dances at the event as well. So very successful and growing. And a big shout out to Len Morissette, who came out during the opening ceremonies and had this really impassioned and unscripted speech for the youth, and it gave me goosebumps. So thanks for sharing your points there, Len, if you're watching. Now that continued on March 16th, but I had other events to go to. One of them I'm going to highlight is Destination Imagination. We had our 9th annual Destination Imagination event, which was an excellent event. We had over 200 kids take part in that, and congratulations to the winners who will be moving on to the national stage out in Vancouver here. I also want to send out a special thanks to our city administration, the man behind the camera, Mr. Simon Ozon, who's always putting the camera flesh on us. But he came out and he was a judge, and only for the price of food, for our coding challenge. So we set up a DR arcade, and we had 13 students who had created their own video games. And so he had the arduous task, the all-day task actually, of playing video games and evaluating how they play, and then telling two of the lucky kids if they're winners or not. So thanks for putting in your time on the weekend, Mr. Ozon. Really appreciate it. And then we had strategic planning. It was always a good time to get together and figure out the priorities of council. I'm sure other council members will talk about that, but I just wanted to throw a shout out to Councillor Platt and Jackie Clayton. It was fun horsing around with you on the Fairview GPRC campus. You guys know what I mean. So it was good times on a great walk. This past weekend too, I had an opportunity to be in Edmonton, just filing some paperwork. I figured, with friends there and a council member there, I could go make a couple visits. I also happened to stop in on the Adam female girls Grande Prairie Knights team who were playing at the Collingwood Recreation Center. It wasn't part of my scheduled plans, but I ended up getting roped in and watched the first game and the last game, and started the Go Knights Go chant in between the second and third period with the score tied 0-0. They ended up winning 1-0 when my little friend Lindley Harper scored the game-winning goal, so I was really proud to be a part of that, and Grande Prairie going into Edmonton and winning a hockey tournament. So way to go, GP Knights girls. You did awesome, and I was happy to be your counselor on duty there. And finally, just a quick update about our counselor, Clyde Blackburn. I got a chance to visit him at the U of A hospital. He was in good spirits, had some good energy, and was actually looking great, sounding great and everything. At one point, he complained about having a headache. The nurse said coffee is good medicine for that, and he said that was the best news he heard all day. So we went down to the coffee shop at the U of A, and I was walking slow because I figured, oh, he probably doesn't have energy. But you guys will all be happy to know that I had to actually pick up the pace and walk at a 1.5 step pace because he was just motoring down the hallway with his IV stand and giving her. So wishing Clyde all the best of health and recovery. Happy to see him in that state of physical and mental health, and hope to see him back here beside me. There's a big gap between Councillor Platt and I. So that's all I got to report. Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen, Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. I really appreciate the update on Councillor Blackburn. It's really good to hear that he's hopefully on the road to recovery, and we'll have him back here soon enough. I guess for me, I had two different kind of events. One was something I've started doing, kind of was quarterly last year, and I've been kind of keep on that pace this year, where I met with 3 local property owners that probably have about 2,300 doors between their own ownership and management in the apartment space. And it was nice to hear that vacancies are still remaining relatively near zero, but sadly none of them having any appetite to build any more apartment buildings. So, but it's something I will continue to do. But it was nice to hear that the vacancy, there was a lot of keys handed in March 1st, and the one property manager by March 12th had them all rented out. So it was nice to hear that for the community. My other highlight was actually with South Peace Regional Archives. They've undertaken, they brought in Carmen Hackstead, and they're looking at doing some fundraising because they want to try to get their own facility. And I think it's a great step for them to do. They're realizing they need some space, and maybe just always asking the funding partners isn't necessarily the alternative. So it was interesting with Carmen presenting to us. A little bit of a shout out to Carmen. One of the things that he mentioned in his career now, he has raised over $100 million in funds. And so that's quite an accomplishment over your career to raise $100 million for your community in different fundraising efforts. One thing that stood out to me that I thought was really interesting is some opportunities we have coming in the fundraising space. Grande Prairie is not just a little community anymore. We have a lot of potential endowment opportunities in the future. I guess to say it in lack of better terms, we have a lot more old money. There's a lot of generational wealth that has been around for more than one generation now. And so that's something that actually I hope some other organizations in the community continue to work on as well. So that's my report.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. So I will mention a couple of things that I was either the lone councillor at or the or one of just a couple. So I got to attend and give greetings on behalf of the Mayor and Council at Crime Prevention's Simple Connections, Stronger Families, and it was really heartwarming to me to see how many residents and workers in the social space spent a Saturday learning how to connect within our community and to better serve our youth and our children. And I like to tell the story of when the Maasai warriors greet each other, they say, rather than, we'll say, hi, how are you? I'm good, thanks, how are you? The Maasai warriors, when they greet, they say, hello, how are the children? Because what they know and what many organizations, the World Health Organization, Rotary International, what we know is that the health of the children is a leading indicator of the health of a community. So it was great to see those folks out spending the day there, and thanks to Crime Prevention and Alberta Health Services, I believe, is the partner on that. And then on I guess Saturday night, I attended Tiny Hands of Hope's Illuminate the Night event, and that is to raise money. It's the second year that they've been specifically raising money for the Children's Memorial Garden that they're putting in by the park up by the hospital there. So we are looking forward to seeing that start to take shape, hopefully over this summer. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Councillor Minhas, anything to report? Not this evening? Okay. I know that you've been away. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just a quick follow-up to something Councillor Thiessen said. I also attended a hockey tournament this past weekend in Spruce Grove. It was interesting to see some of the tri-municipal recreational discussions and opportunities that Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, and surrounding municipalities have executed through recreational publications, etc. So it was very interesting, and congratulations to the Grand Prairie Knights Bantam team. They got a bronze this weekend, so that was great. And as well, a couple things I want to touch base. I wasn't at the last council meeting. It's not, I've seen all of you lots, but I just haven't been doing many extracurricular things in my community because I've been traveling. I had an opportunity to attend the Red Deer Canada Winter Games. I congratulate anybody from this region who attended it. I did see a lot of Grand Prairie coaching officials as well as athletes. Chef de mission. There was numerous people from Grand Prairie at the games. The games were very, very successful. Their goal was to be more financially successful than our games. It's yet to be seen, but it was definitely something that they were achieving to do. Considering our games were in 1995, I would hope that they should be able to beat that. However, times are different, and Grand Prairie is a very unique city. So congratulations to the organizers, the participants of the Canada Games. It was a very well-run event, and that's my report. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Just got a couple items I'm going to discuss. One was the Innovation Recognition Awards that the city puts on for the staff. And it can be something very simple to something quite complex, but it makes the job less labor intensive. Safety is considered, and that's nice to see that there's so many innovative ideas, but we could only award 2 awards this year. And but the place was packed, and I know the council members were there, and Mr. Horatio Galanti did a good job emceeing, so thank you. The other one that I want to talk about is the intermunicipal relationship we have. We had a meeting out in Beaver Lodge the other day, and just to talk to the different towns and villages that are part of that, and seeing the new CAOs in the community or in the meetings were quite nice. So that's all I'm going to talk about. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. A few things I'll highlight is Councillor Thiessen and I took an economic resiliency course. It was a full-day workshop on how do you help the economy of a community recover after disaster. After disaster, over 25% of businesses tend to leave the community, and that's a scary thought. And so there's some good takeaways from that. One of the big ones was they said one of the most important things to prepare for a disaster is to know what businesses are actually in your community. So I was really relieved to hear that in the context of us bringing in business licensing potentially, because that's a huge part of recovering. I also think that there were some other specific ideas that I'm excited to share, and some of our staff in the room that get to take home. But something that occurred to me is we've set aside some money for economic development, and we don't have concrete plans of what to do with that. I hope we invest some of that money or some other resources in preparing for disaster in terms of our local businesses. That's a really important part of our recovery. So I look forward to future conversations of that. A couple other things I'll highlight is I went to an Avondale Neighborhood Association meeting, and I also went to the Disc Golf Club AGM. And both those, one was in an evening, one was in a Sunday afternoon, and kind of uninvited but very welcome. Different city staff showed up to both of those to give their input and to hear what those two organizations were doing. And that really pleased me to see us doing that extra bit of customer service, and our staff kind of off the clock putting in effort to work with community groups. So that made me very proud. Last thing that I'll highlight was I went to the Wolverines wheelchair basketball tournament this weekend, and my shoulders are still stiff, and I only played half a game. I played against Stringham LLP, and they play dirty, I'll tell you that. So they're the lawyers I might want if I ever need a lawyer. I'll say that I got there just after our fire department trounced our RCMP 32-3 in a game. But I think the main thing I want to highlight out of that is there is a community of people in our community that they're challenged with the accessibility and they're challenged with disabilities, but they still go hard enjoying life. And I always want to see how we can support them. So challenge I've got for council and for administration is the cheerleaders is coming up in a couple months. It's a day to spend a day in a wheelchair and see some of the challenges that are there. And I hope that my council members and I hope that some of our staff get in a chair and experience it from that end of things. That was a very eye-opening thing for me when I got to do it. So I'm kind of waiting to hear what the date is. They'll flex it around the city. So when that date comes, you'll be hearing from me lots, and I hope that lots of us partake in that.
I got 8 years experience, buddy. You better get practicing.
I think Councilor Two just challenged me to a race.
I appreciate that. I would encourage all council members to take part. It is actually an eye-opening experience. It gives you an entire different perspective on the world. I'd encourage you to go down to the co-op for some donuts and make your way along down to the CIBC Bank and experience just exactly how easy that is or isn't to traverse. It's pick up some donuts, walk down to the bank. Sounds like a pretty straightforward thing. But I think doing it from the perspective of a user with mobility issues will give you a whole other perspective on how easy it is or isn't to get around our downtown. I will just mention a couple little things. I appreciated the chance to meet with the Commissioner of the RCMP and the Deputy Commissioner of K Division, Ms. Brenda Lucky and Mr. Curtis Zablocki, were here in Grande Prairie. It was a great opportunity to meet with them and to thank them for their support of our local detachment. As I was going in, they said, "Hey, we really appreciate your willingness to try new things in Grande Prairie and to be a pilot site." And I said that continues. And so, as council knows, both of these individuals have some experience with the Grande Prairie area, with our detachment specifically. But it's great to see that they remember our area as one that's willing to try new things. And I think that that's why we've had the success that we have had in piloting new projects here. It was great to see the commissioner identify that it's a priority for her to ensure that her force, that the force is hearing from members directly. They've instituted some opportunities for the on-the-ground RCMP members to give service recommendations or improvements that could be made. They said they're overwhelmed by the number of responses they got. So they have obviously a highly engaged group of people in the members who have great ideas about how the force could adapt. And she was really excited about that opportunity. She said that she has been to just about every division twice already so far since she's been appointed. And she seems like she's really enjoying it. And so it was great to see Brenda, who was stationed here at our Western District 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Yeah, and so not that long ago, all the way in this sort of role as the commander of all the RCMP in Canada, and she still thinks very highly and warmly of Grande Prairie. And then on Friday, for council's information, Friday the 22nd, I participated in a meeting with the chief elected officials from Sexsmith, Wembley, and Deputy Reeve from the County of Grande Prairie at a meeting with Aquaterra Chair and some board members and their recruitment firm who are hiring for the CEO. The board wanted to ensure that we as shareholders were engaged, and so the chief elected officials were doing that on behalf of our councils. One of the things that I asked the board chair to do was to ensure that all council members had the same information about the process. So I would expect that in the next little while, we'll receive some communication from the Aquaterra board that outlines what that process should look like and where council would expect to be engaged, or just what that process will look like, given that that position is obviously really important and the operation of Aquaterra is really important for our region. And with that, I think we'll call our meeting adjourned.